So today, I'm going over the best, most heavily praised, highest rated Sonic game of all time. That game, of course, is Sonic Labyrinth. Sonic Labyrinth, a game that I don't think anyone has actually played all the way through until the end, unless you're crazy like me, or is it really that bad? With the addition of Sonic Labyrinth and Sonic Origins Plus as a part of the Game Gear collection, I figured I'd try out this infamous Sonic game for myself. Sonic Labyrinth, for those who don't know, is of course a Sonic game, but unlike your traditional Sonic games, this one is an isometric puzzle game, sorta reminiscent of Sonic 3D Blast, although the games aren't all that similar. In Sonic Labyrinth, Dr. Eggman has swapped out Sonic's shoes with ones that take away his speediness, so in order for Sonic to get his speed back, he needs to get the Chaos Emeralds, defeat Eggman, and take back his normal shoes. Now why Eggman built speed depleting shoes rather than a machine to steal Sonic's speed is, well, who knows. But regardless, in this game, Sonic runs, or I guess walks, really slow, which is probably what it's most known for. Once you're actually playing the levels though, the gameplay is pretty simple. There's 4 zones in Sonic Labyrinth, and each zone consists of 3 levels, and a boss at the end of each zone. Within each level, Sonic's goal is to run, walk, around the stage, and find 3 keys hidden throughout. Sometimes they're out in the open, sometimes you might need to destroy an enemy that's holding one, and other times you may need to solve a puzzle that's very easy to understand. Very easy. Now collecting keys and destroying enemies isn't the only thing to do in this game. You're also able to find power-ups, keep your time from running out, and die. Speaking of time and death, those are actually the ways in which you fail a level in this game. Each time you begin the level, you start with a certain amount of time that begins to tick down while playing, and doing things such as collecting keys, destroying enemies, and finding time power-ups will increase your time and keep it from running out. I actually didn't even notice the timer was ticking down at first because I'm just that good at video games, but once I got hit for the first time, I realized that the timer at the top went down, rather than rings flying everywhere, which is actually why you want to avoid taking damage in this game. Because especially in some levels, your time is very valuable. Having your time run out, or falling off the map in some levels, will cause you to die and lose a life. Pretty standard stuff, but I'm only really mentioning that because the only times I actually really died were during the first boss. But a weird thing about the boss fights in this game is that before each one, Sonic rolls down a hill and collects a bunch of rings, and if you're able to collect 100 rings, you get an extra life. So pretty much every time I died to a boss, it didn't really matter, because I was able to just replenish that life before the boss started back up. Now because Sonic is able to roll down the hills before boss fights, this of course also means that he's able to spin dash throughout normal levels in the game as well. And sure, Sonic in this game may not run fast, but he sure does spin dash fast. Sonic Labyrinth makes up for Sonic's lack of running speed with a wildly uncontrollable and fast spin dash. But using and utilizing this spin dash is actually pretty fun and can be used for some interesting movement opportunities in some levels. The spin dash in this game is activated by only pressing down a single button, similar to how it works in Sonic Adventure or Sonic Generations, even though this came out before those. Holding down the button for longer periods of time will cause the spin dash to charge up, and if held too long, will uncharge back down. Most of the time I found myself just tapping the button or holding it down for maybe a second because the spin dash allows you to get some insane speeds and bouncing into walls can cause Sonic to go flying all over the level. Because there's only 4 zones in the game and really only 12 levels, the game itself isn't very long, and my total playtime from start to finish was only about an hour, just slightly longer than Sonic Force's total playtime. I'm kidding. Not really though. So how are the zones in Sonic Labyrinth then? Are the puzzles good? Is it really as slow and boring as people say? Well, let's start with Zone 1, the Labyrinth of the Sky. Each zone in this game is titled after some sort of labyrinth, and the first one is the Labyrinth of the Sky, which means you're running around on clouds and such, right? Wrong. Sonic kinda just runs around on these floating platforms for the entire game, and aside from a few levels, he's basically just suspended above a seemingly endless void the entire time. Back to the Labyrinth of the Sky though, this zone is super easy. But I like it because you're able to use the game's mechanics, like the spin dash, pretty freely without worrying about getting hit or falling off the map. The keys in this zone are pretty much just scattered throughout open areas, with the occasional enemy holding one, so finding and collecting the keys in this zone is pretty easy. The Labyrinth of the Sky might be my favorite zone, simply because you're able to just spin dash all over the place, which allowed me to speedrun some sections, and just looked pretty cool overall. By the time I had gotten through level 3 in this zone, I thought I must have been crazy or something, because I was actually enjoying the game so far. And honestly, while I'll talk about this later on, I don't actually hate Sonic Labyrinth, and in fact it was quite an enjoyable little puzzle game. The reason I think so many people dislike it is simply because it's a Sonic game. If this were just any generic puzzle game, I don't think people would take much of an issue with it, but because Sonic is used in this game and is slowed down to an unbearable degree, it definitely makes this one of the worst entries in a franchise about a blue hedgehog that's supposed to be going faster than the speed of sound. Mini tangent aside though, let's go into the second zone, the Labyrinth of the... oh no, why is it this? The Labyrinth of the Sea? I guess not even a game like Sonic Labyrinth can escape water levels. Or can it? Well, to be honest, I have no clue why this is called the Labyrinth of the Sea. At first I thought there was some sort of oxygen mechanic, because the very first level does look like you're underwater, and there are these weird bubble-licking enemies that I thought might replenish Sonic's oxygen, but I don't actually think that was the case, and I think they just looked like that for aesthetic reasons. Apart from the first level though, the Labyrinth of the Sea does not look like you're in a sea, maybe near or on top of a sea, but half of the levels in this area are green, and make this zone look like it should be called Labyrinth of the Forest or Swamp. This is probably the most forgettable zone in the game for me, because this is one where the game starts to transition to more puzzle-related gameplay, rather than just blitzing through the levels trying to find the keys. But it hasn't gone all the way yet, like the next zones do, so this one is largely pretty forgettable. Moving on to the next zone though, the Labyrinth of the Factory? I mean, at least this zone does look like a factory, but I'm not really sure why out of every level theme they could have went with, they thought factory sounded like it would be the most fun, which it really isn't. 2 of the 3 actual levels in this zone are extremely confusing. Okay, well maybe only the second one, but the third one makes me mad because I was missing something that I thought was obvious, but it was actually really not obvious. But I still felt like an idiot after I had to look up a Sonic Labyrinth gameplay YouTube video just to see what I was missing. Shout out to the 3 people on the entirety of YouTube that have actually played and uploaded videos of Sonic Labyrinth for me to watch though. I at least like that this zone looks more like its actual title. I can definitely see the factory elements in the gimmicks and gameplay. Unlike Labyrinth of the Sea, this zone is where the game begins to throw very confusing puzzles at you though, and they aren't very fun ones where you need to solve a riddle or look for a secret code or anything. It's just a ton of portals all over the place, and you have to try every single one hoping to find a key behind them. And I hope you have a good memory, because otherwise you will absolutely forget which portal leads where. I still don't think the game is bad at all, it just took me a few more tries to finish a level rather than beating it on my first try. Now for the final zone of Sonic Labyrinth, it's the Labyrinth of the Castle. I'm not kidding when I say this, but this zone took probably half of my overall playtime because of the absolute menace that is the final level of this zone. Before that though, we get the first 2 levels, which I actually really liked, and these felt more like a return to the first few levels of the game, where you're able to go really fast with the spin dash and fly all over the place. The third level though, oh man, why did they make this level like this? I get wanting to make your last level in a game hard, but this isn't even hard. It's just extremely annoying and confusing. Remember how I was talking about the level with the teleporters in the last zone was confusing? Well, how about we add 20 different doors and make traveling through each one lead to a completely different door? Sound great? Of course not! This level isn't even that hard in terms of maneuvering Sonic or avoiding enemies. The hardest part is allocating enough storage in my brain to remember where each door leads, because you will need to go through multiple sets of doors just to find a single key. This is definitely the only level in the game I actively disliked, and I was about ready to be done with the game if there were any more levels after this one, which thankfully there weren't. But once I finally did manage to beat this level, which I managed to do with barely any time remaining, I mean just watch how close I was to running out of time here when I found this last key. But anyways, after that, it was on to the final boss. Which actually reminds me, I haven't gone over any of the bosses in this game yet, and that's because they're, well, I guess they technically count as bosses. You pretty much can't get hit more than once or else you die, but like I mentioned before, dying is pretty much meaningless in a boss fight, since you're able to collect 100 rings and get an extra life every time you start the boss level. But even if you don't get hit, the bosses themselves aren't very hard. They can be difficult if you don't know what you're doing, but what that really boils down to is just making sure you're always in a spin dash as Sonic, because then you'll almost never get hit. I don't know what else to say. These bosses aren't very interesting or long at all, you just need to hit them a few times and they're gone. That's pretty much it. I will give at least a little bit of credit to the final boss though, because it has an actual mechanic where you need to bait the boss into dropping a bomb on you and then quickly spin dash away as the boss drops down and you're briefly able to get a hit or 2 in. So that made for a semi-nice loop, although I don't think it needed a second phase. Overall, Sonic Labyrinth is a really odd Sonic game, not because it's bad or anything, but in terms of Sonic games, there's nothing really like it. There have been some isometric Sonic games before, but this one's gameplay and puzzle mechanics are pretty unique to this specific game. I know I said in my Sonic Origins Plus review video that I probably wouldn't play any of the Game Gear games in Origins Plus, simply because their implementation is really bad in it, but I had this video planned before I knew how bad they would be, and honestly, Sonic Labyrinth is one of the few games in that mess that actually runs decently, even if the sound is really bad. But again, that's an entirely different issue that I already went over in my Sonic Origins Plus review video, but really, other than the very last level, I kinda liked Sonic Labyrinth. It was short enough to where it didn't overstay its welcome, and there were some genuinely fun moments at the beginning and towards the end that I really enjoyed. Now don't get me wrong, I don't ever want to see a sequel to Sonic Labyrinth, but I think the hour or so you can get out of it now is well worth it if you have any interest in the game. Though, let's be honest, is anyone really interested in Sonic Labyrinth? With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, consider leaving a like and subscribing. And I'm proud to say that I think I might be at the very top of the speedrun leaderboard for this game, seeing as I'm probably the only actual human to have completed this game. Wait, I did complete this game, right? Right?